Yo, thank you, FANdation. We're back with another recap of our favorite, mess just got real, show, FANdation. I'm your host, Anthony, and I'm going to do my best to be your guide in this far-out show as we're actually picking up where Episode 8 ended, where we saw Gaal and Salvor captured by the Mentalics and Tellem Bond, revealing her evil plan, as well as Brother Dawn, Sareth, and Dusk realizing that the Cleon Clones are not the true heirs of Empire. This episode is titled Long Ago, Not Far Away, which is a very cool title that kind of feels like an homage to Star Wars, and I have to admit that this show is like Star Wars, Star Trek, and a handful of my other favorite sci-fis all tied up in a nice, radiantly primed show. There is so much to talk about in this episode, so I'm not going to waste too much time on my corny jokes. But first, do me a favor. If you're new here, please consider giving this channel a like and subscribe to keep up with our weekly FANdation analyses and breakdowns. Look, I see these videos are getting more views. I'm really grateful for you all allowing me to have your time. I understand how valuable time is. I would truly be grateful if you could also please hit that like button. The videos are getting several hundred, 1,000, 2,000 views. I'm saying 100, 200 likes. Please hit that like button, please. YouTube still uses this to help smaller channels like me to grow even in 2023. Please like, subscribe, enable notifications so you're able to watch these videos right after they're published every week. Anyway, that's all I have. Thank you. Now, back to FANdation. I was not ready for this episode. Look, I know I'm supposed to be talking about how this episode was great and all that because it's a lot, but I just need to get it out of my system that I was not ready. This episode is directed by Roxanne Dawson, who has been directing the last few episodes, and I have to just take a moment to give Roxanne all the flowers because these last episodes have been nothing short of outstanding. That's it, I'll stop, but Roxanne, I see you. The next episode opens with a flashback? Yup, we're watching a flashback, and it's in this scene that we're transported a whopping 610 years into the past where we see a young Cleon the First. Wow. A young Cleon the First, and we see the palace as it once was with Cleon's mother serving as Empress, with his father ruling at her side. And real quick, something that's been part of the narrative of the season is how the Cleons we see throughout Season 2 is very different and very much embracing the history of Cleon the First, and even made that statue of his mother that he unveiled when he also introduced Sareth as his bride-to-be. I just think it's interesting that we're often shown how the women in Cleon's life shaped his life, but we see and hear very little about Cleon's father. I noticed that even in this scene here with young Cleon, we get a good look at his mother, but our only glance at his father is at his back and out of focus, and he's just painting a picture of the Empress. I don't honestly recall getting a look at the face of the Cleon's father, but if I had to guess, then I would say that it kind of looks like the dude who plays Brother Dawn throughout the season, and he's dressed up here as Cleon's dad as he kind of resembles Dawn, but with shorter hair. Moving on, it's in this scene that we learn that Cleon's mother and father, whether they knew it or not, were destined to be the last of the Intone dynasty. Young Cleon practiced a game in which he would count the faces on the art that appeared throughout the palace. And interestingly enough, we see young Cleon playing this game as he approached that all too familiar section of the Mural of Souls, where we see the depiction of the skinless man with the green stroke of paint on his neck. Cleon touches the painting and it reveals the hidden passage that was hidden behind, and we learn that this hallway that he entered hadn't been entered for thousands of years. As he enters the room, the lights turn on one by one and we get deeper and deeper into the room, and we get a cool little moment where we see the body of Demerzel inside of a device that seems to have separate sections of her body in a glass structure. Demerzel doesn't waste time, and as he touches her face, she immediately asks the young man if he would set her free. Cleon runs away at first, but he turns around and has second thoughts when Demerzel offers him something that most children would have a hard time turning down when she offers to tell him stories. many stories. We then see Demerzel telling Cleon about how the mechanical people would hide and seemingly give him insight into the secrets of the machines. Cleon keeps Demerzel a secret from his parents, as Demerzel would tell him stories, and lots of stories. Stories about the Empire's expansion, the robot wars, and a home planet called Earth. We then seem to flash forward a few years as Cleon is now the same age as Brother Dawn. And he's questioning Demerzel, what kind of name is Demerzel anyway? And she explains that it's a woman's name that she uses since that's how she appears now, but it's not her first name. She also shares with Cleon that she is over 18,000 years old. They talk for a bit, with Cleon admitting that he has the means to set Demerzel free from this segmented prison and teases the idea of making her whole. But the problem is that he views that as making her more free than he is as Emperor, and that's not cool with him. Demerzel calls him out for being unpleasant, and Cleon admits that his mother had passed away, and he'll be assuming the throne in the morning. We don't hear anything about his father. And he doesn't seem at all excited about ruling the Empire at this point in his life, and he talks about how he might not be able to come back to visit. Demerzel tells Cleon a story about how she was a leader of soldiers, and after she lost a famous battle, she was taken captive and brought before Roberatus, who, like Cleon, was new to the throne. But he was different than Cleon in that he liked to study and torture Demerzel out of morbid curiosity. Demerzel seems to hint that she gave him what he wanted in those moments of torture, like tears, because she knew that she would outlast him. She mentioned how she was placed in this mechanism so that she could be imprisoned, because within her is the secret to making more machines, which makes her unique among the machines. Demerzel suggests that Cleon free him and make Demerzel his advisor, but Cleon isn't with the idea and kind of just storms off after having a tantrum. We then see Cleon as a much older man, and it's at this point in his life that he finally pushes the button that makes Demerzel whole and frees her from her segmented prison. And it's cool to see how her body instantly mends itself. He also brings her a dress to wear so that she's not naked. Demerzel at this point has been studying the hell out of Cleon, and I can't help but notice how sexually playful that she is right now with Cleon as he's waiting and watching her get dressed as she tells him the story. She begins telling Cleon stories about long ago, and the stories seem to have been erotic in nature. Regardless of her attempts, we soon see that Demerzel remains in this room for quite some time, as the next time we see Cleon visit her, he's much older and is in a stage of his life where he now looks more like Brother Dusk. He visits Demerzel to tell her that he had called off his engagement to some unknown off-screen woman because she wasn't Demerzel. He also tells her how he searched the galaxy for the knowledge to set Demerzel free, and he shows her the golden box that we previously saw handmaiden Rue find in Demerzel's quarters a few episodes ago. Cleon opens the box and we see tools inside, and Demerzel recognizes them as things that came from Earth. It's in that moment that Cleon opens the force field that had been holding her prisoner. It immediately installs a device in the back of her neck that puts Demerzel in a whole new kind of prison that set things in motion for everything that we've seen happen on the show thus far. Cleon is proud of himself and anxious to try out his new device when he asks Demerzel to kiss him. And she does. And it looks sweet and all, but things switch up fast when he then asks her to try to harm him. And we see that Demerzel is seemingly unable to hurt Cleon at all. He explains that the device he installed will allow her to harm humans, but just not him. And it will also prevent her from transferring her consciousness into another body. Demerzel is mortified by this development and tries to demand that Cleon undo what he's done, but he refuses and goes on to further explain that his plan of a genetic dynasty is vast and has an idea of Demerzel standing by the side of his successors, with Demerzel ruling the Imperium from the background as she oversees the development of the clones. Demerzel is not at all happy with Cleon's ideas and threatens to leave, but he's sure her programming will bring her back anyway. We then see her submit and then form her hands in that familiar pose and agree to be what Cleon wanted her to be. We then switch to see that Cleon the First hologram wrapping up his explanation of the origin of Demerzel to both Brother Dusk and Handmaiden Rue, while keeping them in that very same prison room that once kept Demerzel locked away for thousands of years. Brother Dusk is pissed when learning the truth and is definitely upset with Cleon the First that he and the other Cleon clones are not the ones actually in control, as the actual heir to Empire was never the Genetics dynasty, but was actually Demerzel all along. Cleon the First is not at all with this Cleon talking back, and at the first sign of Brother Dusk giving him some lip, he immediately activates the force field that was powerful enough to keep Demerzel prisoner. We then switch back to Ignis, where Gaal is getting violated in the worst way possible as Tellem Bond begins a ritual to take over Gaal's body by placing her consciousness inside Gaal's mind. Salvor Harden thankfully breaks in with those frisbee discs that she swiped from the top of her prison and is able to use them to disrupt the ritual long enough to swoop in from the side, grab Gaal, and slap some sense into her to break Tellem Bond's hold on her so that she can escape. We then switch back to Terminus, and man oh man, the stars are getting dark as Empire's arsenal of ships all converge on Terminus under orders of Brother Day. We then switch to see Bel Rios walking in to interrogate Holber Mallow and Brother Constant about some of the equipment that they found on their ship. Holber explains the concept of his castling device that we saw back in the beginning of the season when we saw Holber use this item on the other king, but Bel is more interested in finding out the motives of Brother Constant. Bel and Holber go back and forth, exchanging verbal jabs on one another for a bit before Bel hears enough and is ready to perform street surgery right there, right now, to make sure he's not getting lured into a trap. Brother Constant questions whether or not this is subconsciously all intentional, based on the influence and manipulations of Harry Seldon. It's at that moment that Bel gets a call that Brother Day has arrived on his ship. Brother Day arrives and starts reviewing the intel that they have about the circus of Terminus and takes a special interest in a building that they've identified as the Foundation's church. Brother Day then insists on taking some troops to go down to the service himself to accept the Foundation's terms of surrender. Bel tries to reason with Demerzel, but she doesn't offer much help other than telling Bel that she chose him, meaning Bel. She chose Bel for a reason. We then switch to see a spaceship landing on the surface of Terminus, and Brother Day and his goons marching in the town square to meet director Seth Cermak and his team as they welcome Brother Day to the Foundation. Brother Day brings out Polly as a gesture of power and then insists on being taken over to the church. We then switch inside the building that looks like a church, and Brother Day just looks pissed at first, and then he switches to a little smirk before he starts making demands for the Encyclopedia Galactica that he was promised as the basis for the creation of the Foundation. Seth Cermak admits that there is no encyclopedia. With Brother Day then demands that Polly give him a demonstration of the performance that he uses to recruit planets in order to recruit them into the follow the leadership of Foundation. He then begins a process at which he takes everyday iron, some metal, and charismatically places it inside of a machine. And after a few moments, we see the iron is transformed into solid gold. But Brother Day is not impressed and dismisses the whole thing as simply alchemy, a conjurer's trick. Polly continues with his performance for a few minutes, professing his beliefs in the teachings of his group, at least until Brother Day feels like going full messy on Polly and kicking him into a cache of equipment. It's when this equipment spills on the floor that Brother Day gets really upset and sees that the Foundation is manufacturing personal auras. Brother Day loses his ish when he finds out and starts making demands for his forces to start commandeering the Invictus and taking the planet. And in the excitement, we see Brother Day grab a knife and stab Seth Cermak right in the stomach, where he collapses to the floor, and I'm like... We then switch back to Bel on his spaceship as they begin making plans to board the Foundation's orbital ship, the Invictus, when their alarms suddenly go off, and we see that the crew of the Invictus is preparing for battle. This is a lot of the crew of Invictus's first time seeing battle, and they're going up against a seasoned veteran in Bel Rios. We then switch to see Brother Day seemingly preparing to leave the planet Terminus, but before he leaves, he catches a glimpse of the vault in the distance. And then he changes direction and starts marching toward the vessel. We then switch back to space to see General Bel Rios and Glaywin strategizing over the battle when they agree to send out their fighter ships to help in the attack. We then switch to Gaal and Salvor running through the forest in order to escape Tellem Bond and the Mentalics. They start making their way to Salvor's ship, which is exactly where they left it, since Harry never actually left the planet, and that was all an illusion that Tellem Bond wanted them to believe. Salvor hands Gaal back the Prime Radiant and tells her to start up the ship while she stays behind and checks things out. Gaal does it, but Salvor is attacked by Lauren when she is outside performing recon in the area. Gaal is still trying to get things together inside the ship when she's attacked by Tellem Bond, who is inside waiting and bragging about how she got there first. We then switch back outside to see Salvor and Lauren going toe-to-toe in a good old-fashioned street fight, with Lauren playing dirty by continuously mentally impersonating Salvor's old lover. We switch back inside the spaceship where Tellem Bond is easily able to big sibling the Prime Radiant out of the hands of Gaal, and then goes on to mentally torture Gaal by casting an illusion of being back on Synnax and impersonating her father and expressing his disappointment in Gale's life choices. And this is a low blow, right? This is real dirty because we all know how sensitive Gaal is to her loved ones. And it's actually taking a toll on both Gaal and Salvor, as these illusions are able to touch on some real emotions that haunt both women. Speaking of emotions that haunt the women, Tellem tries to continue to torture Gaal by having her mind revisit the illusion of the future that the mule comes from, so that, she can force her to relive the reality in which Salvor doesn't survive. And this is when Tellem walks into her own personal episode of
When Keeping It Real Goes Wrong.
And Tellem is not only detected by the mule, but she's also forced to confront the power of the mule when she hears him scream her name. And then he moves in to attack her. Tellem drops to her knees while screaming in agony from the attack. Now, time out. Real quick. Something about this scene made me really stop and think. Remember when Gaal was told that the reason she had bruises around her neck the first time she visited the future and she got yoked up by the mule? She found out that that was because her mind convinced itself that she was actually in that physical situation, and her mind forced her body to pop the blood vessels in her neck as if she was really being strangled. Now, by that logic, that tells me that the power that she thought was the mule's in this moment, making Tellem Bond drop to her knees, that was actually Gale's mind and Gale's power all along. That means this attack right here that was executed on Tellem wasn't like Gaal taking advantage of the power of the mule and weaponizing it. This was Gale's actual mind and Gale's actual power fighting back and vastly overpowering the strength of Tellem Bond. Just wanted to point that out real quick, so let's get back to it. Gaal doesn't get to enjoy her victory long, as Tellem Bond is able to fight back and once again overpower Gaal and yoke her up against a wall. We switch back outside to see Salvor and Lauren still going at it and having a crazy, brutal fight right outside the spaceship. Lauren is able to fire off a few shots from a rifle in the mayhem, and they hit the side of Salvor's ship and shake things up on the inside just enough for Gaal to get free for a moment and to try to remind Tellem Bond that her name is Gaal Dornick, and she's got a special delivery of these hands straight from the south side of Synnax. We then switch back to the planet Terminus, and we see Brother Day continuing to make his way toward the vault, while bringing Polly and Demerzel with him to take a look at it for himself. As he's approaching, Polly actually says something slick about Harry Seldon not being afraid of Brother Day, and it annoys him enough that he wants to prove that he's not afraid of Harry, and he starts removing his armor and takes off his personal aura, and then Harry appears. Well, Let's be clear, Harry Black appears, and Demerzel urges him to stop the acts of aggression by the FANdation in the war in space. Harry says that he's not interested in war either, and invites Brother Day and Demerzel to speak with him from inside the ball. And they all head inside. We then switch back to space to see Glawen preparing to pilot one of the fighter ships that are going to fight back against the FANdation and the Invictus. We're then able to see some of the best Star Wars-inspired space battles this side of the galaxy. The Empire is able to show signs of success with the fight too. We then switch inside the vault where we see Harry waiting in his office to speak with Brother Day. Brother Day and Harry exchange a few verbal jabs and interrogations, with Day outright asking if Harry is behind the assassins that attempted to take out Brother Day at the beginning of the season. Harry claims that he doesn't need to take out Day because he already knows when the dynasty ends. Day then accuses Harry of being the one causing the war and asks him if provoking Day is part of Harry's mathematical conclusions. And then something really interesting happens when Harry just outright stops talking to Day. And instead, he shifts his attention and the conversation to Demerzel. And he asks Demerzel, what serves Empire best? Power or longevity? And which of those outcomes does she actually desire? Day does not take to being ignored lightly at all, and he has a little temper tantrum and explains that he already did the things that Harry Seldon wanted him to do by ending the genetic dynasty, and he accuses Harry's formula for not taking into consideration this particular iteration of Cleon. Now, either Harry is being real petty or he's just being really real when he tells Day that his math actually does take into consideration the concept of outliers, and that Brother Day just isn't one of those. And yo, I can't tell if Harry is trying to be funny or disrespectful or what, but this shit had me in tears. You're not one of them. You're like, what? In the middle of this tantrum? And then Harry fixes the table that Day just wrecked in his tantrum without even looking at it, letting us all know that he was just watching as a parent watches a child when they let their emotions go out of control. But he was always in control. And I can't help but think back to that scene earlier in the season when Day and Demerzel had a similar situation, when Day was just going off on a long tirade about something he didn't want to do, and Demerzel just waited him out. Harry then again just stops talking to Day, and instead shifts the conversation again, and it speaks directly to Demerzel, like the Emperor of the Galaxy isn't just standing right there. Harry then whips out the Prime Radiant and offers Demerzel a crystal ball. We then switch back to Glawen, who is piloting his fighter plane and is not looking too good for Empire, as some of his people are biting the dust while he's battling the Invictus. But, you know, your boy Glawen ain't no chump and proves his abilities when he single-handedly pulls a Luke Skywalker and hits that one thing on their spaceship that makes the whole thing blow up in a chain reaction. The whole thing looks really cool, and Glawen is celebrating until the moment that his ship takes some damage. And we see him taking a tailspin, and he starts falling onto the planet below, much to the utter shock and horror of his husband, Bell, who's just forced to watch the whole thing from the front row. We then switch back to Harry Black, who is offering up the Prime Radiant. Harry Black states that he lured Day there in order to give it to him, and even offers to teach Demerzel how to read it. And the look of utter surprise and confusion on Demerzel's face is saying the most right now. Brother Day seems dismissive about the idea of a computer being passed from one AI to another, and you know what? In this day and age with AI on the rise, I'm kind of with Brother Day on this, being apprehensive about the idea of AI and computers talking to each other without humans. Day goes on to say that the fate of humankind will be decided by those of us who are actually human. And Demerzel looks insulted. Like, no, he didn't. Brother Day then goes on to remind Harry that the Prime Radiant was built with his permission. So, as far as Brother Day is concerned, he already owns the Prime Radiant. We then see Bel Rios reach out to Day and confirm that the Foundation is in the process of retreating after having lost a battle in space. Brother Day then gives Harry the ultimatum, stating that he's willing to spare Terminus if Harry admits that his math is flawed. And Harry again speaks directly to Demerzel, and he says that whatever happens today, that this is about the survival for all of us. And then he pleads with Demerzel to invent a better future. And yo, look, I know I'm not the only one feeling like Harry knows right now, right? Like, he has to know. Harry has to know that Demerzel is the true ruler of Empire and has been controlling things from the background. But if this is true, then how long has Harry known? How long has he known that Demerzel is both a machine and is in control of the Empire? Because if Harry Black knows, then it goes to reason to believe that Harry White also knows, and that this moment is actually part of his larger plan, right? Harry declines to denounce psychohistory, and interestingly, Brother Day instead uses this moment to order the attack on the planet and tells Bel Rios to bring down the Invictus down on the planet's surface, with Bel reminding him and pleading, there's nobody on the surface except civilians. And then Day picks up the Prime Radiant, says some smug words of satisfaction, and then leaves. And yo, I totally believe this is part of Harry's plan. Not only is my guy Harry speaking to Demerzel, realizing who's really in charge, but the fact that he even invited Day inside the vault makes me feel like my guy is scheming. The last time Harry invited others into the vault, it was when Polly, Holber, and Brother Constant entered, and they spoke with Harry before he sent them on their respective missions. It was also at this time that Harry kissed Brother Constant on the top of her head and instilled a slice of his mind into her brain with just a touch. If you pay close attention, the camera zooms in and lingers when Brother Day picks up the Prime Radiant. This feels like it's intentional, with Brother Day now touching something of Harry's, and I can't help but wonder if he wanted Day to touch the device, and if he did, it's because it's all part of his plan. Something is up, but we'll hopefully get back to this later. We then switch back to Salvor and Lauren still battling it out outside the ship, with Lauren looking like he was gaining the upper hand for a second and ready to pull the trigger to shoot Salvor at point-blank range. Salvor is able to get the upper hand back, and she traps Lauren in the middle of the in-between sections of her ship where we can't quite enter the ship and he can't quite leave. And then Salvor traps him and vents all of the oxygen out of the room, taking out boy Lauren out. No matter how hard he tries to screw with Salvor's mind, he's done. Salvor then, when she's catching her breath, hears Tellem and Gaal struggling in the other room, and she rushes over to help, but Salvor gets a knife to the arm for her trouble. As Salvor just falls over after getting a little flesh wound cut with Tellem's little knife, we see, we see Harry White sneaking up on Tellem Bond from behind, and yo. Tellem and I are in disbelief, and Tellem even dismisses him as a poor illusion. I guess from Gaal or Salvor, but Harry shows us that 1, he's not an illusion, 2, he has nothing to say, and 3, bitch, you gonna die. And proceeds to beat the hell out of Tellem Bond with an axe, leaving her head a wet puddle on the floor that I don't want to step in. He then takes a seat, catches his breath, and just says, I never liked her. It is yo. FANdation. In episode 9, this show does not know how to chill. Like, yo, Yo, OMG, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, Apple. Thank you, Isaac Asimov. Thank you, FANdation, and all the writers who sat there and said, you know what will be cool? Yo, I'm voting for y'all. Like, y'all deserve this. Like, yo, OMG, wow. That was so satisfying to watch. We then switch back to Brother Day's spaceship, and he's returning from his chat with Harry, where we see Holber Mallow in his cell watching Brother Day walk by, and he decides to take this moment to just pop off at the mouth and start talking shit to Brother Day. Brother Day doesn't say anything other than giving the orders to take Holber and Brother Constant to the bridge. We then switch to see Brother Day and Demerzel walking through a hallway, and she pauses for a moment, and she seems distracted. Brother Day notices this too and asks her what's on her mind, and she tells Brother Day that she has to attend to another matter at home. Brother Day is confused because this is his big moment. Demerzel lets him know that he's not the most important part of her day, and even tells him how she sometimes has more important shit to do. And it happened a lot when he was a kid, which resulted in him growing up in an uncertainty in morals, and she hoped that being intimate with him, she would gain the influence to correct his shortcomings. And then she apologized for failing and her oversight for what he has become. Brother Day is hurt, like he's stuck or stupid, and he's kind of pissed too. He starts to tantrum and talks about how he's the Day that is instilling change and how he's a complete man. And then Demerzel then gives the most sophisticated insult in FANdation history, y'all. She goes, "No, your sperm led by its waving flagellum, mistaking its random motion for complexity." My God, yo. Low blow. Like, I'm hurt. I'm hurt. Damn, you all right? Wow. That cut deep. Day is absolutely stuck. He's stuck. He's frozen on stupid. As Demerzel just walks off and gives some goons the orders to prepare a jump ship for her. And my guess is that she's being summoned by Cleon the First to come handle that problem in the basement from last episode where Brother Dusk and Handmaid Aru minded his business. Day then walks off to the bridge, absolutely on 10, and he's not in the mood for Holber Mallow's bullshit right now. It just tells him that Holber's attack deserves a reply. We then switch to see the planet Ignis, and we see that, oh snaps, your boy Glaywin has survived this crash, and he's signaling back to the ship to talk. His husband Bell is relieved that, he survived, but it's like the perfect storm because Brother Day doesn't give a flying about Glaywin and just reminds Bell that he's given his order. Glaywin and Bell then exchange a tearful goodbye as Bell is in the absolute worst position and seemingly has no choice but to give the order to crash the Invictus onto the surface of Terminus. And we see it. We see the destruction and the chaos, the heartache and the mayhem as we see Glaywin, Polly, and many more have their final moments as the Invictus slowly and brutally crashes onto the surface of the planet and destroys the first FANdation. We even see Demerzel on her ship get emotional at the sight of the destruction. And Brother Constant, I feel it the most for Brother Constant as this episode closes, with Day looking smug and pleased with the outcome. And credits. And wow. This can't. Did this really just happen? Is it over? Yo, this can't be it, right? The whole thing looks pretty final, and things can't possibly get any worse. But something keeps ringing in the back of my head. One of those things that we said to save for later. I have a theory. Something feels off because we learned in last week's episode that Salvor Hardin had a brief meetup with Harry Black, and it was in that moment that she put the idea in Harry Black's head to reach out to Holber Mallow, and that his use of this person was a direct reaction to the information that Salvor gave him. But we also learned that everything that Salvor was doing on the planet Ignis had to have taken place before these events happened here with First FANdation. If that's the case, where is Gaal and Salvor, right? Something tells me that the fact that FANdation didn't save this moment for the finale means that this could possibly mean that maybe it's not real, right? Like, I know this is kind of out there, but what if the Mentalics and Gaal all just projected the destruction of Terminus into the minds of everyone around? Obviously, the main hole in that theory is that Demerzel also witnessed the destruction. But let's just put that to the side for now, just in case she's also susceptible to the powers of the Mentalics. What if this is all a fake out by Harry White just to buy more time for the FANdation? Like, what if he wants Day and Demerzel and the rest of Empire to think that the FANdation has been destroyed in order for them to continue their work right under their noses of Empire? I could imagine Harry somehow affecting Demerzel when she walked into the vault, the same way he was able to affect the mind of Brother Constant when he kissed her on the forehead. I really find it hard to believe that Harry Black invited Brother Day into the vault unless he had an ulterior motive, because Harry Black never is as direct as he appears to be. Anyway, that's my theory, and I intentionally have not watched the final episode so that I can give you all this authentic reaction and breakdown. But tell me, what do you think about this episode? Is it a wrap for the FANdation, or does Harry Seldon still have another trick up his sleeve? What is going to happen with Demerzel when she returns to Terminus? And also, what is going to happen to Brother Dawn and Brother Dusk when Brother Day returns? I mean, Dawn is 100% back on the planet playing house with Sareth, and Dusk is locked in the basement. I cannot wait to go back and watch that episode, and then come back and talk to you all about this one. But first, before you go, do me a favor and hit that like button. Please hit that like button and subscribe so you can join us again next week as we dive into the next episode and talk about what happens next. Otherwise, I'm going to have to check you all later. Peace.